the asymptotes, it intersects at the center of the hyperbola.
Is this like continue from 10 to 4?
It is. It's still hyperbolas.
I'm not gonna be here tomorrow.
Okay.
I think I told you already, but
I'll take notes for you. All right, so the asymptotes intersect at the center of the hyperbola, and we have two equations that are given for us to use to find the asymptotes. For the horizontal or the transverse, let me say that again. When the transverse axis is the horizontal axis, so when the transverse axis is on the horizontal, it is y equals k plus or minus b over a times x minus h. And then when that transverse axis is the vertical, it is y equals k plus or minus, but instead of b over a, it becomes a over b times x minus h. So, in example 2, we are asked to sketch this hyperbola, 4x squared minus y squared equals 16. Now, this one's going to be pretty simple, but we're going to sketch it. When we sketch it, I want us to find these parts. The foci, the asymptotes, and then the equation in standard form. So we're going to be looking for those parts in this equation. So when I see 4x squared minus y squared equals 16, is that going to be on the horizontal for the transverse or the vertical?
Wait, no.
Well, 4x squared is first. X squared is first.
Right.
And when we divide by 16 to get rid of that 16 on the right hand side, we still have x squared minus y squared. So if it's x squared minus y squared, then that is the what?
That would be b.
Look at this. X squared minus y squared. So what?
Oh,
it is a horizontal.
I was thinking of B and A. That says not.
So it is a horizontal. So that lets me know that the transverse axis is going to be on the horizontal axis, and we would use this equation to find our asymptotes. So now that I know that part, I need to get it in standard form to have all of my missing pieces. So how would I get this in standard form? It's pretty simple. Divide everything by 16. So now I have x squared over what? 4 minus y squared over 16 is equal to 1. So this would be my standard form. And I want you to write it for the standard equation of the hyperbola. Okay, then I need, in order to have my A and your B and your C to find the foci, I need to find C. Right now I have A and I have B, don't I? If A squared is 4, then what's A?
2.
And B squared is 16, so B is 4. So now you find C, because we need the foci.
Root 6.
So C squared would be 4
Squared plus 2 squared.
4 is
16.
So C would be root,
Why are you squaring 4?
because it's A squared plus B squared, or the way I've written it, B squared plus A squared.
Sure is plus 2.
I thought it was A minus B.
For a hyperbola? For an ellipse. but for the hyperbola
So it'd be
it's
20.
plus. So C is
Root
root 20 or 2 root 5.
So you multiply that by 2 to get your foci.
Multiply by 2.
Or you can.
We're
get
on
your
the
foci
horizontal. Yes, we're on the horizontal.
length.
And our center point where those asymptotes are going to intersect is at 0, 0. So I need to go left 2 root 5 and right 2 root 5 from that center point.
The
So
0
it'd be-
plus or minus 2 root 5.
If I'm going left and right, that affects what value?
X.
The x. So plus or minus 2 root 5, 0. Seriously. So to find the asymptotes,
What'd you do, Miss Harrison?
every time I click, like move the screen over, it turns it black. I'm not real sure why.
It looks cool.
Well, thanks. So y equals k plus or minus b over a times x minus h. So to find those asymptotes, I'm just going to plug in. H and k were 0, 0, right? So y equals plus or minus b over a. So what's 4 over 2?
1/2. No, 2.
So 2, and then x minus 0, that would just be x.
Plus or minus 2x.
So that's my asymptotes.
How did you know that H and K were there?
Because I don't have a minus, x minus, or y minus.
Oh.
It's just at 0, 0 here. Okay, so now I have to graph all that information. And mine just disappeared. So I'm going to rewrite it up here. A was 2, right? B was 4. My foci was plus or minus 2 root 5?
Yes, ma'am.
0. So we know that we're at the origin for that center.
A is your vertex, right?
What now?
A is your vertex.
What do you mean by vertex? My center point, which is where the asymptotes are going to cross through.
0.
But what is you're talking about the length of the transverse axis? Remember, the length of the transverse axis from the center point to that vertex is your value of A. Is that what you're asking me?
From
Your center point to your vertices is the length A.
right
Okay? So if A was 2, then I should be going,
to the left
Two.
and to the right.
that's right. So those are my vertices, or my vertex for each point, each side of the hyperbola.
See, this is where I got lost was B.
So this would be
Wait,
negative
how do you know?
2, 0, and 2, 0. Because remember, we know that from that center point where those asymptotes intersect to the vertices is the value of A. Now, for the conjugate axis is the value of B from that center point.
Right.
So what was B?
4.
4. So I'm going to go up 4.
So what are we graphing? Are we graphing the asymptotes?
We're about to. And I'm not going to put a point there. I'm going to show that that is the height of that graph. So my asymptotes are going to go through that. If you'll just give me a second, you'll see why I did that line. And then we're going to go down 4 because that's on the conjugate axis. Same thing.
So is that a transverse at the dotted line?
This axis here,
Yeah.
this line, the transverse axis is the horizontal axis. All I'm doing is showing you we're about to make a rectangle and your asymptotes go through the vertices of that rectangle. And you make that rectangle by your A and your B. So my A is how I know to drop that line. So we have this rectangle. and our asymptotes go through the vertices of that rectangle. So if I wanted to go ahead and draw my asymptotes here, remember they're going to be dotted lines because it's just approaching those. And the only thing that I haven't placed on my graph is my foci. And the foci was 2 root 5 both ways on the x-axis. So 2 root 5 is what in decimal approximation? 4.47. And how do I know to do that? Well, it says that C is the distance between that center point and your foci. So I have to go over, you told me 4.7? So this is my foci points. So that hyperbola is never going to cross those asymptotes, but it approaches it. It's kind of hard for me to make with the inwrite pad, but well, it'll get easier. It's not, if I wrote it on that board, it would be a lot better. Okay, so now let's check that equation that we got for our asymptotes. It was plus or minus 2x, right? So if I go if it's plus or minus 2x, let's just do the y equals 2x. That means that my y-intercept's at 0. I go up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. Is that on that equation? It is. So what I'm telling you is you have to find the asymptote or the equation for the asymptotes, but you don't necessarily have to use it to graph it. If you know your A and your B, that's going to tell you where the asymptotes are going to go through. They're going to go through the center point and go through the vertices of the rectangle that has been formed by your conjugate axis and your transverse axis from A and B. Does that make sense? Okay, so we have everything in that graph that we were supposed to have. So let's work another one. And then it'll probably be, you'll see it a little bit better. So we have 4y squared minus 9x squared equals 36. So what do we need to do here in order to make this look like the standard equation of a hyperbola?
536.
So I have y squared over minus x squared over equals 1. So this is my standard form. That's the standard equation of the hyperbola.
So this is going to be vertical
It is going to be vertical. How do you know that?
because your y is in front.
My y is the leading or the value that's in front. So it is vertical. So I'm just going to write that up here just so I don't forget. What's my center point? What is the asymptote is going to go through?
0, 0.
0, 0. Alright, so if y squared over 9 helps us find our a value, then a squared is 9. So what is a? And b squared is 4. So what is b?
2.
And now we can find c by saying c squared equals a squared plus b squared. So that's 13, root 13. Right? So let's go ahead and find our asymptotes.
So that would be y equals k a over b, or plus or minus.
So y equals
B plus or
k plus or minus, but k was 0, a over b. So what would that be?
3 over 2.
3 over 2, and then x, and if there was, of course, an h and k, we would have to actually finish it out and solve it. So there's my asymptotes. So far, you have your asymptotes, which I'm going to expect you to give me. We have that it's going to cross through 0, 0. We know that it's going to be the transverse axis is vertical. Now we're going to graph all that information.
Your foci would be 0, and then plus root 13, plus or minus root 13.
That's right. Because it's vertical. Okay, so if my A is 3, then am I going to go left or right?
Up.
Or up, sorry, I meant left. I meant over or up and down. So which one?
Up. Up 3, down 3.
Everybody agree with Anna?
Yes, ma'am.
And that's going to be my what? What value is that?
A.
It was, my distance was A from that center point. Is that my vertex points
Yes.
for the transverse axis? So my vertices are 0 plus or minus 3. Let's finish this. And then for my value of B was 2. So now I can create that rectangle. And the only thing that we're missing is showing those asymptotes going through the vertices.
It's like 3.6.
You're talking about my foci? So then there's my foci point. And then we're all done. You just show the sketch of that graph. So you need those asymptotes to tell you where to approach, for your graph to approach. Okay, so let's do a few of those. Let's graph a few of those for homework.
I got to go. I gotta go all the way to the mold.
Let's do page 720,
Upstairs.
19 through 25, odd. So 4 problems.
Page 720. What page?
19 through 25, odd.
You said 4 problems? Yeah,
19 through 25. And if you need a pass to class, just tell your teacher to call me.